Some of the most intense voices that shape our lives don't come through words. They manifest in the weight of regret, in the confusion that suffocates, in the pressure that never ceases, and in the anguishing silence precisely when we long to hear something from God. Many wonder if the Lord still speaks, but the deeper truth is this: He has never ceased speaking. The problem isn't His silence, but our inability to be still. Imagine, my friend, that you enter an environment where someone is marking a gentle rhythm on the table, but you arrive carrying heavy burdens, walking in haste, breathless, making too much noise, and no matter how much the sound is there, you don't perceive it, not because it doesn't exist, but because the noise you brought completely covers it. This is the journey of many believers. They walk carrying heavy burdens, advance hurriedly, surrounded by noise, and end up missing the message, not because God has fallen silent, but because the heart is too restless to hear. We live in an era where quietness has become rare, silence is uncomfortable, and attention increasingly fragile. But God's voice demands exactly what the world tries to suffocate: quietness, silence, and full attention. He speaks with intention, not just to resolve our doubts, but to direct every step of our existence. In 2 Chronicles 16:9, the word reveals that the eyes of the Lord run throughout the earth, seeking those whose heart is completely His, not ears, but surrendered hearts. God speaks where He is welcomed, where there is true surrender. He doesn't demand perfection, but surrender. He doesn't seek the most capable, but the most willing. His voice isn't background sound, it's living direction for those ready to listen. God's voice is the direction that guides your next choice. It's the comfort that silences anxiety in the heart. It's the wisdom that reveals what natural eyes cannot perceive. When God speaks, mountains move. When He speaks, storms calm. Your steps gain direction, and confusion gives way to peace. Hearing God's voice isn't a gift reserved for few. It's an inheritance granted to all who believe. He speaks in a way consistent with His word. He speaks in a manner that brings rest to the soul. He speaks with tenderness, leading you closer to His heart. He speaks to strengthen you where you feel weakest, but one must learn to listen. Willingness to stop is necessary. It's necessary to silence one's own thoughts and surrender to His direction. Sometimes God speaks through a verse that remains echoing in the mind, as if it had been written just for you. On other occasions, He speaks through words spoken by someone, simple words, but that touch deeply and echo in the soul. Sometimes it's a silent conviction, an inner certainty that doesn't fade with time. Other times it's a holy restlessness that you cannot silence. God's voice may not come as thunder, nor amid extraordinary manifestations, but when He speaks, something within you recognizes. It's the Spirit testifying to your spirit. After all, as C.S. Lewis said, God whispers in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our suffering. It is His megaphone to awaken a deaf world. My brothers, so often we plead for God to speak louder, but He is the one who invites us to listen with more attention. We want to shout, but He whispers, not because He is far away, but because He is so close that a whisper suffices. God's whisper requires inner silence. It requires proximity, surrender, and trust. The Lord's voice doesn't always confirm our desires, but it always reveals what we really need to hear. When you want to flee, it's His voice that calls you to remain. When you want to hide, it's God's voice that calls you to the light. When you think of giving up, it's she who renews your strength. When you desire revenge, it's this same voice that leads you to the path of forgiveness. The Lord's voice doesn't just guide, it transforms. It shapes your character, prepares your path, purifies your thoughts, and reveals with tenderness the Father's heart. You don't need a pulpit to hear God, nor a title, nor background songs. What he seeks is a willing heart, attentive ears, a spirit hungry for his presence. Time to listen is necessary, and courage to obey. And that's why today I want to lead you on a journey where we'll discover 3 powerful truths about how to hear, discern, and respond to God's voice. My brothers, when the Lord speaks to your heart, he does more than indicate a path. He reaffirms your identity in him. Many know God's name, but have forgotten their own. They live responding to fear, doubt, shame, and pain. They assume lying labels and distance themselves from the identity that heaven granted them. But when God speaks, he reestablishes the truth about who you really are. You are not the sum of your wounds. You are not what they said about you. You are not defined by the falls you've already overcome, nor limited by the difficult season you faced. When God's voice echoes clearly, it establishes your identity. It doesn't bring confusion. It dispels it. It doesn't feed your anxiety. It silences it. It doesn't repeat the accuser's lies. It reaffirms the Creator's truth. And there's no more powerful voice to shape who you are than that of the one who formed you with eternal purpose. He knows your true value. He knows the potential within you. He understands your limitations, and even so, knows how to speak precisely to the most intimate part of your being. My beloved, when God confirms who you are, something deep moves within you. You stop seeking approval in wounded places. You stop seeking validation in voices that will never understand your purpose. You stop hiding in environments where you were called to shine. You begin to position yourself with conviction, to enter places with serene confidence, to pray with boldness, to walk with firmness. And all this not because you've reached perfection, but because the Father's voice has declared the truth about your heart. The truth of your identity doesn't come from culture. It doesn't spring from comparison, nor does it sprout from human praise. It comes from the Creator's voice, from the God who formed you. Many spend a lifetime trying to find themselves, but the true encounter with who you are begins when you hear God's voice. His voice doesn't just bring information. It brings affirmation. It declares that you are chosen, that you are enabled, that you are known, that you are fully seen. Some still carry the name that pain imposed on them, others the label that fear placed on them. But God gives you a new name, a name that carries purpose, that carries mission, a name that expresses exactly how heaven sees you. When he speaks, what was distorted is restored. Your value is reaffirmed. Your dignity is rescued, and your doubts begin, little by little, to lose strength. No one remains confused about who they are after truly hearing God's voice, even if the process of clarity takes time. Even if the surrounding scenario remains the same, for a while something deep adjusts within you. Your identity is strengthened. Let's remember the words of Isaiah 43. 1. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. Dear ones, this verse isn't just a poetic piece to charm the ears. It's an eternal affirmation from the God who knows each of us. He declares that we were created by him, molded by his hands, redeemed by his blood, called by name, and we belong to him. This is what God's voice reaffirms, not just the tasks you need to fulfill, but the essence of who you really are. This is your spiritual DNA, heaven's mark on who you are. You have a defined place in the divine plan. You are not a mistake. You weren't forgotten. You're not lost in the crowd. You are fully known and intentionally called. The more we get what we now call ourselves out of the way and let him take us over, the more truly ourselves we become. God doesn't mold us to erase our identity, but to reveal our truest self, the one that can only be understood in the Creator's light. And when you begin to hear this voice more than any other, confidence awakens within you, clarity returns to your understanding, peace rests upon your interior, and boldness begins to guide your steps. You stop doubting what God has already sealed. You stop rejecting what God has already affirmed about you. You stop fearing what God has already promised to resolve. When the Lord calls you by name, he's not just identifying you. He's reclaiming you for himself. He's declaring with authority, "You are mine." You don't belong to your past. You're not defined by the scars you carry. You're not molded by the voices that criticized you. You belong to him. This is the transforming power of God's voice. It breaks the labels the world tries to impose on you and realigns you with the name he wrote for you before you even existed. You don't need to conquer value. You just need to hear the Father's voice. You don't need to build an identity in the world's eyes. Just remain close to the shepherd. He knows your name. He sees each of your tears. He understands your battles. He already contemplates your future. And when you begin to live in the light of the truth he declares about you, everything begins to align, because his voice doesn't just reveal who you are. It transforms how you walk. You stop fighting for attention. You stop begging to be understood. You stop living in fear of rejection. You begin to live as one who has already been chosen by the Father. You live as someone fully known and loved, as someone who hears the shepherd's voice and responds with confidence and peace. You don't need to justify yourself. You just need to obey what he has already declared about you. My dear ones, let God's voice end the internal discussions. Let it silence once and for all the enemy's lies. Let it call you out of the hiding place of insecurity and lead you to the center of the purpose for which you were created. My friends, the Lord's voice doesn't always come as gentle comfort. Sometimes it arrives as an intense beam of light, clearly revealing what we've avoided facing for too long. Before healing happens, the wound needs to be opened. Before growth flourishes, the roots need to be examined. This is the ministry of God's voice, not to expose out of cruelty, but to restore out of love. It doesn't come to wound, it comes to heal completely. Correction isn't the absence of love, it's love in motion. Only those who truly care have the courage to touch what others prefer to ignore. And the Lord, who sees all with eyes of mercy and truth, loves too deeply to remain silent before what needs to be transformed. He speaks about the corners of the soul. We hide behind rehearsed smiles. He visits the locked rooms of the heart, where we keep the pains that time hasn't healed. Where others have accommodated your harmful habits, God insists on sanctification. Not even inner silence escapes his inspection. He reveals the bitterness hiding under the appearance of gentleness, the fear disguised as ambition, the pride wearing the mask of self-confidence. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is beyond the reach of his voice. There's no true transformation without confrontation. What you've learned to live with or manage, even if it seems harmless, may be precisely what's blocking your spiritual maturation. The soul's progress slows down every time we choose to ignore God's voice, whether spoken through the Word or whispered by the Spirit. God doesn't limit himself to affirming what we feel. He challenges our assumptions. He calls us out of what accommodates us. His voice goes directly to our habits and interrogates them. It exposes our excuses. It reveals our hidden resistance. And often it's not the evident sins that paralyze us, but the subtle patterns, thoughts we've learned to tolerate, hurts that were never resolved, obediences that have been wearing away over time. Every advance toward the calling requires sincere examination, and God, in his wisdom, doesn't waste time recounting your past. He summons you to the responsibility of the present, because what you choose to do now matters. To human eyes, comfort is often confused with peace, but in God's presence, true peace usually begins with holy discomfort. The Lord's correction isn't gentle. It uproots what shouldn't be there. It shakes the foundations we built on sand, so he can build truth on firm rock. Many cry out for clarity, but forget that clarity only comes after purification. The path ahead needs to be cleaned of the debris, left by concessions made over time. That's why God's voice doesn't just direct. It also corrects. It doesn't just comfort. It confronts. Notice how the Lord speaks in Zephaniah 3:17. The Lord your God is in your midst, mighty to save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will renew you in his love. He will exult over you with loud singing. Although this verse is full of tenderness and joy, notice what precedes it, the presence of God himself. And where the Lord's presence dwells, no impurity remains untouched. His love isn't passive, it's active. In love he calms, but in love he also shakes. The same voice that comforts your soul is the one that confronts your sin. The same God who rejoices over you with songs also speaks to the hidden regions of your heart, those that still need realignment with his will. My brothers, hearing God selectively is a serious spiritual risk. Receiving his voice during worship, but resisting it in decisions and behaviors, results in a divided, inconsistent, and fragile faith. If you want to truly grow, you need to embrace the totality of what he says, both direction and correction. Many ask God to speak about the future of their calling. Few desire him to address the present failures of their character, but maturity requires both. Genuine humility is needed to ask the question few dare. Lord, what needs to be transformed in me? This simple prayer opens space for the Spirit's purifying fire, and it's the vessels that allow themselves to be refined that end up carrying the deepest glory. When you allow God to speak directly to your weaknesses, that's when true strength begins to manifest. When you surrender to him the secret struggles, those no one sees, the process of liberation finally begins. When you stop justifying what he's trying to uproot, the path ahead begins to open. The conviction you feel isn't condemnation. It's a sign of grace. It's proof that God is still calling you. It's like light piercing through darkness and revealing what needs to be healed. It's heaven's alarm preventing you from heading toward the abyss. It's a sign that your heart is still sensitive to God's presence, that he can still reach you. True love doesn't remain silent before error. It speaks the truth. That's why often those who love us most tell us exactly what we'd prefer not to hear. They see the path ahead and speak because they care. And if this is true among us, how much more will it be with God, the one who sees all things? He tells us the truth in love, not to shame us, but to protect and prepare us. Truth, when received with humility, has power to transform. The Lord will never allow you to settle where he destined you to soar. Perhaps the stagnation you feel today isn't the result of God's absence, but of resistance to obeying what he has already spoken. Delayed obedience creates a kind of spiritual fog. It clouds your steps. It steals your peace. It delays purpose. When God speaks about what needs to be transformed in you, he's not depriving you. He's preparing space for something greater. What he asks you to leave wasn't made to sustain the weight of your life's next season. He may call you to forgiveness. He may lead you to reorganize your priorities, to end cycles, to distance yourself from certain content, or to purify your intentions. Whatever it is, one thing is certain. There's freedom, clarity, and power on the other side of obedience. Spiritual maturity isn't measured by the volume of accumulated knowledge, but by the speed and sincerity with which you respond to divine correction. This willingness to adjust course and surrender completely is what differentiates those who merely walk alongside faith from those who live deeply committed to it. If all you seek is momentary inspiration, God's voice may sound demanding, but if your longing is for genuine transformation, God's voice will be your greatest ally. It doesn't massage the ego. It molds character. As long as your own personality is what you are bothered about, you are not going to him at all. The very first step is to try to forget about the self altogether. True surrender doesn't begin with external effort, but with the silent denial of self, allowing God to realign the foundations of our being. God isn't forming people who draw attention through worldly shine. He's molding men and women who reflect his heart, humble, integral, surrendered. And this reflection begins with purification. It's not about achieving perfection, but about surrendering completely. Needing correction doesn't disqualify you. It positions you, because if God still confronts you, it's a sign that he's still leading you. He hasn't turned his face away. He hasn't given up on you. He's speaking because he loves you with jealous and persistent love. Allow his voice to wash every area of your life, even those you prefer to hide. Let it rebuild your thoughts. Let it confront everything that has been stagnant for too long. Let it awaken movement where fear generated passivity. This is what happens when God's voice confronts. It doesn't destroy. It transforms what needs to be redeemed. My dear ones, every mission born in God's heart begins with a word, and it's not always a thunderous word or one visible to others. Sometimes it's a word whispered to your spirit, calling you to leave where you've been and enter what was prepared for you. The same voice that affirms who you are and confronts what needs to be purified is the voice that lifts you up and sends you. It doesn't speak by chance, nor to entertain. It speaks with direction. It speaks with purpose, with movement in view. The instruction that comes from God is never static. When he speaks, it's always to advance. Standing still may seem safer, but it's obedience that unlocks the future. You weren't created to live in constant doubt. You weren't called to survive by inertia. You were generated to move under divine orders, with steps guided by a voice that knows exactly where it's taking you. My friend, God's voice is the signal you've been waiting for. It's heaven's go. It reignites what had been extinguished within you. It undoes confusion and places direction where there was once uncertainty. After being confirmed in identity and adjusted in character, it's time to be activated in purpose. The Lord doesn't reveal truths for you to merely contemplate them. He reveals them so you move with boldness and faith. Therefore, it's not enough to just hear. You must respond. You must act. Many listen to God's voice and still continue waiting for another sign. They hesitate because the task seems too big for their baggage. But when God speaks, he also provides. When he commands, he enables. When he sends, he goes ahead. You don't need to have all the details organized when you have a clear word. True faith doesn't consist in having the complete map. It consists in taking the next step with confidence. It's taking the next step trusting, even without seeing the entire path, because a single step in obedience can completely transform the direction of your story. Amid the noise of doubt and the slowness caused by fear, God's voice becomes your faithful compass. It rescues you from stagnation. It renews the exhausted's strength. It reignites dreams that seemed buried. The commissioning that comes from heaven never leaves you where you are. It always pushes you beyond the comfort zone. After all, if the mission were something you could fulfill alone, his voice wouldn't be necessary. But the simple fact that God is speaking to you is proof that something greater awaits you, something that surpasses your past, confronts your fears, and undoes every excuse that has paralyzed you. Moving forward isn't the result of self-confidence. It's the result of confidence in the one who spoke. It doesn't depend on your strength, but on the faithfulness of the one who called you. If it was God who sent you, then it's he who will sustain you. And to remind us of this, we have the powerful exhortation from Micah 6. 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. This verse isn't just advice, it's a call, a divine commission to live with purpose, not just to exist. It's God's voice showing you how to move, with integrity that practices justice, with compassion that loves mercy, and with an attitude of humility that walks side by side with the Lord. This is living with mission. This is walking with eternal purpose. God doesn't call you to accumulate revelations. He calls you to live them. What you received in the secret place of prayer needs to take shape in the real terrain of obedience. God's calling isn't just something you feel, it's something that moves you, a continuous invitation to walk under his direction. When you postpone obedience, you also end up postponing the fruits it would bring. And when you begin to question what God has already made clear, the heart gets lost in confusion. But when you move at the exact moment he speaks, you enter grace's rhythm. Many are waiting for open doors while ignoring the instructions that have already been delivered. They long for more signs when they've already received direction. They ask for more confirmations when they've already been commissioned. You don't need a new prophecy to begin. You need faith to walk on what has already been revealed, because faith without action is just concept, but faith in movement transforms into living testimony. When you respond to God's call, you enter a supernatural alliance. You don't walk alone. His hand goes ahead, his favor surrounds you, and his spirit enables you from within. Obedience may not be the most comfortable path, but it's always the most rewarding. It positions you for divine encounters that no human effort could produce. It leads you to unexpected provisions. It places you exactly at the point where miracles collide with action, where heaven touches earth through your movement. Many delay advancement because they're waiting to feel ready. But readiness isn't an emotion, it's a decision. You become ready the moment you obey. God doesn't choose those who are already prepared. He prepares those who respond to the call. He doesn't look for those who have everything in order. He looks for those willing to say, "Yes, Lord." You don't need to see all the details of the path. You just need to give your yes. You don't need everyone around you's approval. You need to be in tune with the one who called you. God's voice carries creative authority. When he says go, creation itself moves. When he says speak, anointing follows. When he commands build, resources manifest. As C.S. Lewis affirmed in Mere Christianity, give up yourself and you will find your real self. Lose your life and you will save it. This call to obey without seeing the complete picture is, in fact, the deepest way to find who you were really created to be. The enemy's greatest tactic is to keep you paralyzed by fear. But God's voice breaks the cycle of stagnation. His word doesn't come empty. It comes with power. And when you receive it, you can't let it sleep. It was made to be put in motion. There's someone waiting on the other side of your obedience. There's a breakthrough reserved on the path you've been avoiding. There's favor stored for the exact moment. You take the first step. Stop questioning if you're capable. Start remembering who the voice that called you is. God doesn't waste words. If he spoke, it's because that has eternal value. Lift your eyes. Leave behind the hesitation that paralyzed you, and advance with firmness, sustained by the word that has already been released over your life. This isn't a time to retreat. It's time to advance with faith. You've already been affirmed in identity. You've already been confronted in character. And now, you've been commissioned to fulfill the purpose. Say yes to the calling. Take the step that heaven is waiting for. Walk with courage in the direction of what God has already established for you before your birth. When God speaks, he doesn't just reveal. He transforms. He calls. He sends. May the Lord's voice be the fire that inflames your purpose, the truth that establishes your identity, and the command that leads you to the destiny prepared by his hands. Now, brothers and sisters, let us unite in prayer to our gracious and loving God. He is here, hearing every word and knowing every need. Close your eyes, open your heart, and pray with me in faith. Let us pray. O Most High, source of all light and author of every true word, your voice sustained the universe in the beginning, and still today sustains my fragile heart. You speak, and the constellations align. You whisper, and the storm calms. You command, and the mountains bow down. And yet, Lord, you speak to me. Broken sinner, living dust, clay vessel, what grace is this that calls me by name? Lord, how many times have I passed by your words, with haste or indifference, like one who hears rain on a roof without recognizing the source. Have mercy on me, for every silence cultivated before your call, for every excuse raised against your commandment. Purify me from spiritual deafness that makes me a hearer and not a disciple. Destroy, O God, every secret altar, where I sacrificed obedience for comfort, surrender for control, holiness for reputation. Give me a heart like Samuel's, that awakens in the middle of the night upon hearing, Speak, Lord, for your servant hears. Make me tremble before your voice, not from punitive fear, but from reverent awe. For your voice doesn't just correct, it heals. It doesn't just exhort, it liberates. It doesn't just command, it transforms. Speak, Lord, amid the noise of my anxiety. Speak louder than the voices of culture, deeper than the appeals of the flesh, sweeter than the enemy's deceptions. Teach me to hear with faith, to obey with promptness, to surrender with joy, to follow with perseverance. Kindle in me a love for your word. That is more urgent than my desires, more constant than my feelings, firmer than my circumstances. Cover me with your grace when I stumble trying to follow you. Sustain me with your spirit when I lack courage to continue, and when your voice commands me to go. Give me quick feet, clean hands, fixed eyes, and a heart that says, "Yes, Lord," even when it doesn't understand the way. Guard those who walk with me, my home, my brothers in faith, the weary and the forgotten. Let your voice also be upon them, calling, comforting, correcting, commissioning. For yours is the kingdom that cannot be shaken. Yours is the word that does not fail. Yours is the glory that does not pass away. In the name of your Son, the living Word who dwelt among us, Jesus Christ, my Saviour, my rock, my hope, I pray. Amen. If this prayer spoke deeply to your heart, share in the comments. I trust in you, Lord. We want to walk with you on this journey of faith. Believe that God heard every word, wiped away every tear, and is already moving heaven in your favor. Great things are coming. Share this moment of hope and faith with others. Subscribe to the channel, and send this video to friends and family. Thus, together, we'll be answering Jesus' call in Mark 16:15. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Thank you for being with us until here. It's a joy to be able to walk alongside you on this spiritual journey. May the Lord continue blessing you and your family with peace, love, and strength for the days to come. We'll meet in the next video. May God be with you always.